What's up, guys? Hopefully you all had a good day yesterday. So I thought I'd do an interesting little video today talking about something that is interesting, but also this is going to be a rather spooky video as we're talking about the ghosts of the London Underground. So there are a lot of stations on the London Underground that have been reported as being haunted. Station staff have obviously had a lot of paranormal experiences at these stations. There's been ghost sightings and all kinds of stuff. Obviously certain sections of track are haunted as well. We'll be talking about those in this video. So let's get into it. So the first place we're looking at today is Bethnal Green Tube Station, which is located here in East London in the borough of Tower Hamlets. Now, Bethnal Green Station is a station that's been reported to be haunted for many years. A lot of station workers have reported later hearing the sounds of women and young children, like the voices of women and young children in the station late at night. Now, years and years ago, obviously there was a major tragic event that happened at the station. Now, during the war, a lot of you guys may not know this, but during the war, a lot of the London Underground stations were used as air raid shelters. And Bethnal Green Tube Station, oh dear, my phone slipped over. Bethnal Green Tube Station is one of those stations that was used as an air raid shelter back in the early, sort of during the days of the war. That was a station used as an air raid shelter. Now, one night, the air raid siren had started going off, and people had started panicking, and they'd started running down into Bethnal Green Station, which was being used as an air raid shelter. And a woman was running down the steps into the station, and she was carrying a baby in her arms. And as she was running down the steps into the station, she dropped the baby. And she sort of bent down to pick the baby up. And as she did so, people that were running down into the station behind her started falling over her, and it caused a massive crash. And unfortunately, I think about over 100 people died in that incident. Obviously, we know that most of the people, and then it's been reported that most of the people that died were women and young children, which is obviously incredibly sad to think about, and it's just one of the worst incidents that's probably ever happened on the Underground network, and it's also been reported, and it's also one main reason why Bethnal Green Station has been reportedly haunted for so many years. I know there was a story of one who said that this was before the night tube had started running. So the station they were getting ready to finish their shift. They'd gone round, checked all of the station, they'd done one last sweep of the station to make sure that no one was still in it, know that there was nobody still in the station. He's locked the station up for the night and went into the office to finish off some paperwork before he called it a night and finished his shift. And whilst he was in the office, he started hearing what sounded like the voices of women and young children. Now, he was obviously understandably very confused because he'd done one last at the station, and he was pretty sure that there wasn't anyone still in the station, or there couldn't have still been anyone still in the station. So he left his office and he walked into the corridor where he could hear these voices coming from. But when he walked into the corridor, no one was there. And obviously, that to me, that's incredibly weird. Like, imagine you're the only one in the station, and you're the only one in the station especially late at night. And you start hearing these voices of women and children in the station when you knew that you were the only one in it. and you go to investigate these voices, but there's no one there. And you're thinking like, what the fuck have I just heard? And that's probably what he was thinking. He was probably thinking, what the hell have I just heard? You know, as obviously he just heard the voices of women and young children in a completely empty station. And obviously, what he heard were the ghosts of these women and young children who died in that tragic accident. Obviously years ago, obviously when one of those people got crushed. So yeah, very very sad story to hear, but it's also a very spooky story nonetheless. So next up we have Beckentry Station. Now Beckentry Station, or Beekentry. I don't even know how is it pronounced Beekentry or Beckentry. I mean, I've always pronounced it as Beckentry, but I have seen some people pronounce it as Beekentry. So I don't know if there's either which one is the correct pronunciation for that station. But I'm gonna go more for I'm gonna pronounce it as Beckentry because that's how I've always pronounced it. Now Beckentry Station in East London, which is on the District Line, it's known to be, and again, it's known to be has been reportedly haunted. There was obviously two trains that collided on the track outside the station many years ago. Um, and one night, a guy was working at the station one night. I think he was up in the office, doing something in the office, and he heard the door started rattling. Now, when the first time the door started rattling, he didn't think anything of it because he thought, oh, a train must be coming, must be about to pass through the station, and the wind, from that train was obviously causing the door to rattle. So he heard it, then he heard it a second time, and he still didn't really give it much thought. He thought, oh, a train must be passing through, this, that, and the other. And then he heard it a third time. And he thought to himself, well, surely the train, if there was one, must have passed through by now, it must have left by now. So he went down to the station platform to investigate this door that was rattling and see if he could find anything that was causing this door to rattle. But he didn't find anything. So thinking nothing of it, he turned round and went to walk back up the stairs to the office. And as he was walking back up the stairs, he started getting this feeling that there was someone stood behind him watching him. And he turned round, and there, standing right in front of him, was a young woman in a white dress with no face. Obviously, upon seeing this woman, he turned round and he ran right upstairs, ran into the office. And his colleague was in the office, and his colleague said to him, "You okay? Like, you look like you've seen a ghost." So he said to his colleague, "Yeah, I think I have." And his colleague said to him, "Was it a woman in a white dress with no face?" And he said, "Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was." And his colleague said to him, "Well, I've seen her as well." So obviously she's been, I don't know if there's been, any like more recent sightings of this particular ghost at Beckentry Station. I mean, it might still be haunted. I don't know. I mean, you know, it's very. I mean, obviously, imagine that though. Like you're putting like late at night, you've gone down to investigate the door rattling. You turn around to go back upstairs. You get that feeling that someone's standing behind you. When you turn around, there's a woman with no face standing there. What? What the actual fuck? So moving on, we have the ghost of Liverpool Street Station. Now, this is a crazy one. Now, one night there was a station worker in Liverpool Street Station. His colleague was up in the office, was up in the control room, and he was watching he was looking at the CCTV cameras. Now, his colleague, who was looking at the CCTV camera, was obviously he was looking at the CCTV cameras to see a man with white overalls on the CCTV cameras. Now, the station worker that was down on the platforms and everything couldn't see anyone. He was looking around, he couldn't see anyone. He kept radio through to his colleague who was up in the control room, and he kept saying to me, "Are you sure? You can see someone on the cameras." And his colleague was saying to him, "Yeah, I can see this man in white overalls on the camera." And he was looking at the CCTV cameras, and he could see this man with wearing his pair of white, in his white overalls on the CCTV camera. He even radio, he even, he even said to the station that was on the platform that the guy was standing right next to him at one point. Obviously, the station worker that was on the platform obviously was quite confused as he was looking around. He's looking up and down the platform, was looking around, and he couldn't see anyone. With his own eyes, he couldn't see anyone. Yet his Holly was looking at the CCTV cameras and could see a man in white overalls on the CCTV cameras. Obviously, he walked up and down the station a few times to see if he could see anyone, but couldn't see anyone. So thinking nothing of it, he went. He turned. He went to. Obviously, it was on the when the guy that was looking at the CCTV camera first saw the man in white overalls. He said that he was in the entrance to the eastbound Central Line, Central Line tunnel. So obviously, the station worker had gone down to the eastbound platform and was looking around, couldn't see anyone, and he obviously, he looked up and down, he walked up and down the stations to see if the platform, to see if he could see anyone, see anything. He'd gone to walk back up, turned around, went to walk back up the escalator, and there on the bench in front of him was a pair of white overalls. Now, he was saying that had anyone come out of the tunnel and placed those white overalls on the bench, he would have seen it. But he didn't see anyone. So, who the fuck left that pair of white overalls on the bench? That's the strangest story I've ever heard. He didn't see anything, with his own eyes. But his colleague was looking at the CCTV cameras and could see a man in white overalls on the CCTV cameras. And then obviously when the guy that was on the platform turned around to walk back up the escalator to the office, there on the bench was this pair of white overalls. And obviously, as he said, if he'd seen it, if anybody had come out of that tunnel and placed those overalls on the bench, he would have seen them do that. He would have seen, he would have seen them, but he didn't see anyone. He had no, he had no explanation for why there was now a pair of white overalls on the bench, which they hadn't been there before. So it's a very strange and weird story, I have to say. Now, the next one comes from King's Cross. Now, for years, people reported seeing the ghost of a young woman in what's been described as clothing that looks like it was from around about the 1980s. Now, obviously, there was the fire at King's Cross Station back in 1987, in which a number of people died. And this young woman that was believed to have been seen at the station, who's been in several locations at the station, is believed to be the ghost of one of the people one of the victims who died in that fire. Obviously, obviously that would make sense considering that she's been described as being a young woman wearing clothing that looks like it's from the looks like it's from sort of like the mid to late 1980s. That does kind of tally up. Apparently, there was a story that apparently a person that was through the station saw this young woman knelt down on her hands and knees with her arms outstretched, crying. And she went over to see if this young woman was okay, and to try and help her. And as she did, another passenger came along and walked straight through the young woman, and she vanished. She vanished just moments after that, and moments after, she vanished into thin air. Now that is creepy. I mean, imagine that. That's just there's no denying how scary that actually is. Obviously, then up next, we have the haunted. Covent Garden Tube Station. Now, for years, Covent Garden Tube Station was reportedly haunted by the ghost of an actor named William Terrace, who died in 1890 on December 16th, 1897. Now, unfortunately, he was stabbed to death by a rival actor named Richard Archer Prince on the Strand outside the stage door of the Adelphi Theatre. Now, unfortunately, obviously, William Terrace's ghost has also been said to haunt the Adelphi Theatre. A number of people have reported seeing his ghost in what actually used to be his dressing room. People have said they've gotten to lie down in that dressing room, and when they've woken up, they were shocked to see a man standing there, like what was that man standing there. Later found later just later matching to match the description of William Terrace. Now, me and my uncle actually went to the Adelphi Theatre back in February. We went to watch the Back to the Future musical. Now, obviously, I'd heard before we went, I was a bit nervous about going to that theatre because I'd heard all of the stories of the theatre being haunted, and that was really playing on my mind. And that was playing on my mind the whole time we were there. Like, I don't know. I mean, the vibe I got from that place was from the Adelphi Theatre was very, very weird. Like, it's hard to describe the vibe I got from the place, but it wasn't the most pleasant of vibes. I don't know what, I was like, the whole time I was there that night, I was sort of looking around, expecting to see something, you know, thinking I was going to see something with my, and it was on, I was going to be creeped out or whatever, but, thankfully, neither me or my uncle actually did see anything. So, obviously, the reason that William Terrace's ghost is said to actually haunt Covent Garden Tube Station in particular is because before Covent Garden Tube Station was on that was in that location. Um, there used to be it was on that site, like there used to be a bakery there, and William Terrace would often visit that bakery. And they closed that bakery down, and sort of tore the building down to make way for obviously the Covent Garden London Underground Tube Station. And obviously that's a big part of the reason why his ghost is said to be seen at was said to have been seen there so often. From what I've seen, there hasn't really been any reported recent sightings of the ghost at that station, so I guess things are not too bad now. I know apparently one night a station worker was there and he saw a gentleman in like a top hat walking up the stairs towards the exit of like the entrance of the station. And he radioed through to his colleague and told him to open the gate, so that this person had like come out the station. And about 10 minutes or so later, his colleague radioed through to him and said that he'd been stood there by the entrance. He'd had the entrance open for about 10 minutes, and nobody had come up the stairs. So obviously the station worker was obviously very confused. He was like he knew he'd seen a gentleman in a top hat, walking towards the stairs that led up to the entrance of the station. But his colleague, who had been stood at the top of the stairs, said no one had come up. Said that he'd been stood there for 10 minutes and nobody had come up the stairs. Obviously, talk about creepy. So the next haunted place is South Island Place. Now, this isn't actually a haunted station per se, but one night a station worker, one day a station worker had to do a track walk between Oval and Stockwell stations. So the station worker was doing his track walk, and as he came past South Island Place, he came across an elderly gentleman working there, and he noticed that this elderly gentleman had one of those old oil tilly lamps. Now he got into a conversation with this elderly gentleman, and he was saying about how he thought that those old oil tilly lamps had gone out of fashion years prior, and this elderly gentleman was talking, it was saying to him about how he actually preferred to use those old oil tilly lamps. So it carried on having this conversation, and then the station carried on his way to Stockwell Station. When he got to Stockwell Station, he met the light controller, and the light controller said to him, like, what took you so long? And he said to, and the station worker said to him, I was talking, I was having a conversation with the gentleman that's working down at South Island Place that night. And the station, like the light controller said to him, but you aren't be talking to anyone because, I haven't got anybody scheduled to be working down at South Island Place tonight. I don't know who you were talking to, but I don't have anyone scheduled to be working down there that night. So the station worker and the light controller actually went back down to South Island Place, where this elderly gentleman had been seen. But when they got there, this elderly gentleman had vanished into thin air. He wasn't there. Now, obviously, the station worker did find out that years and years ago, a gentleman was actually working there one night, and he was using a loud piece of machinery, and obviously he was wearing a pair of ear defenders. Obviously he was wearing like these ear defenders. He didn't hear the sound of an oncoming train coming towards him, and the train unfortunately hit him and killed him instantly. And it's his ghost that is said to have been seen in that area at South Island Place, obviously by various people. So next up is the Hennington Loop. Now, multiple drivers who have been stopped on the Hennington Loop waiting to go southbound on the Northern Line have reported weird experiences. They've said, but they've had incidents where the interconnecting doors on their trains will open by themselves, and obviously they said that they kind of walked through the station expecting to, the train expecting to, to see someone, but there's no one there. And they weren't able to explain why they kept hearing the interconnecting doors on their trains opening and slamming shut by themselves. Now obviously, no, but like when you get to Hennington, all of the passengers, get off the train, and then the train goes onto the Hennington Loop and waits on the Hennington Loop to go back northbound. Now, years and years ago, a gentleman was attempting to move between the carriages of a moving train, and whilst doing so, he slipped and fell onto the track underneath the train, and the train had dragged him into the Hennington Loop and killed him. And it's his ghost that is said to be haunting that section of the track, and it's said to be the cause of the interconnecting doors on the trains opening by themselves. So next up we have the ghost train sighting at South Kensington Tube Station. Now this is one of those that I'm a little bit more skeptical of. So going back to 1928, a person got off of a train at South Kensington Tube Station. Their train disappeared into the tunnel about a minute or so later, and then just a few moments after their train left, another train came into the station, and there was apparently a man hanging from the side of his train. Now, obviously, not long after this, the train vanished into the tunnel, never to be seen again. Now, people have investigated this and have managed to kind of, confirm that the train seen that day never existed, and never been in operation on the tube. Now, there was a person that reportedly had a similar experience back in 2013. I'm not debunking either sighting, but I'm a little bit more skeptical on that one because there's not really, the thing is, there's not really a lot of evidence that kind of backs up these reported sightings. I mean, I think it would be very easy for for someone to say, "Oh well, I saw a ghost train at South Kensington." I mean, we know that the first reported sighting of this train was back in 1928, and I don't know too many details about the sighting the sighting that was purportedly witnessed in 2013. All I know about that one is that back in 2013, someone reportedly had a similar experience to the passenger that to the person who had the experience back in 1928. So I don't know. I mean, this could very well be a real thing. Maybe there has been, a ghost train that's been seen at South Kensington Tube Station. But I feel like I'm always going to have my doubts about this one because there just isn't really a lot of evidence that backs this up. There's not too much information about it. Like, all that's known is that it was a train that came into the station, and there was reportedly a man hanging from the side of this train, and then the train vanished into the tunnel and was never seen again. And research, found that this train had never existed, so I don't know what to believe. Now, that's probably the only ghost story from the London Underground that I've always had my doubts about, or I've always been skeptical about. Like with the other sightings, I've never really been too skeptical about them because there's been a little bit more, kind of, sort of evidence and information to back these sightings up. So, and it's like, there you go, kind of thing. So next up we have which one? Yeah, and let me try and get the other haunted station. I know that they say that Bank Station is haunted by the ghost of a woman of the old lady in black. She's been seen at the station. Apparently, she's the ghost of a young woman who is constantly looking for her brother. She used to visit the old bank that was located on that site and say, "Has my brother returned today?" And she's doomed to forever walk the state, to forever walk to forever walk the corridors of Bank Station looking for her brother. Farringdon as well. Apparently, late at night at Farringdon, people reportedly hearing reportedly heard the screams of a young woman at the station. We know that a young woman was actually buried on that site of Farringdon Station years and years ago, so it could very well be her ghost that's haunting Farringdon Tube Station. Imagine you're in the station late at night and you start hearing the screams of a young woman. Like, Jesus, that would be terrifying. You know. Um, I think I've actually covered. I know there was I've seen a video online. I think it was from around about 10 years ago. It was from someone who was at Knightsbridge Tube Station, which is on the Piccadilly line. I think Knightsbridge was in West London, and they were recording a video and they had their cameras sort of aimed towards the tube tunnel, like the London Underground tunnel, and they claim that so you can see somebody sort of peeking its head out from in the tunnels or like a ghost. I've seen the video and I'm not too convinced myself, to be honest. Obviously, Elephant and Castle Station has been reported to be haunted as well. Apparently, footsteps have been heard running along the platforms and stuff. Doors have been heard rattling. Apparently, a young woman has been seen always boarding a Bakerloo line train around the evening time, but she never gets off the train. You know. So, I mean, yeah, all these different crazy sightings that have been reported on the London Underground. I mean, the one that always will stick out to me is the sightings of it is the one at Liverpool Street. The fact that the station was walking up and down, he couldn't see anyone with his own eyes, but his colleague was looking at CCTV cameras and could see a man with white overalls on that CCTV camera. And then obviously the station was walking back and went to go back upstairs to the office and saw that a pair of white paper overalls had been left on the bench. And he said, and obviously as he said, if he'd seen anyone come out of that tunnel, he would have seen them. But he didn't see anyone. So who left those pair of white that pair of white paper overalls on the bench, I wonder? I don't know. So I hope you enjoyed this little video talking about the many ghost stories of the London Underground. I'll see you for another one soon.